Welcome, curious minds. Today, we journey back to a time when the world was vast, unforgiving, and dominated by the elements. We are going to the year 1925, to the remote corners of Alaska. You've likely heard the name Balto, the famous sled dog with a statue in Central Park. But history often forgets the true titan of the North, a small, scrappy, and rebellious dog named Togo. This is the real story of Leonhard Seppala, his incredible lead dog Togo, and the epic serum run that saved an entire town from certain death. To understand this feat, we must first understand the setting. In the late 1890s, the Seward Peninsula was a place of dreams and nightmares. Gold had been discovered, and thousands of immigrants, mostly Scandinavians, accustomed to the brutal cold, flocked to the town of Nome. Among them was Leonhard Seppala, a Norwegian born in 1877. Seppala was a man of the sea and the forge, a fisherman and blacksmith by trade. He never intended to become a legend of the ice. But destiny, in the form of a mining company president named Japhet Lindeberg, offered him a one-way ticket to Alaska. Upon arriving in Nome, Seppala found his true calling, mushing. While others saw dog sledding as a grueling necessity, Seppala saw it as pure freedom. He wasn't just a driver, he was a pioneer. While most mushes considered 30 miles a hard day's work, Seppala and his teams would often cover up to 100 miles in a single day. He spent his summers training his dogs on wheels, ensuring they were athletes of the highest caliber. In 1913, Seppala received a group of Siberian huskies, intended for an expedition by the famous explorer Roldamun. When the expedition was cancelled, Seppala kept the dogs. This was the turning point. He began to dominate the All-Alaska Sweepstakes, the most prestigious race in the territory. But amid these powerhouse athletes, a new puppy was born on October 17, 1913. He was small, it was sickly, and he looked nothing like a champion. Seppala named him Togo, after the Japanese admiral Togo Hai. At first, Togo was a disappointment. He was so tiny and difficult to manage that Seppala actually gave him away to be a house pet at 6 months old. But Togo was not meant for a warm hearth and a quiet life. Only weeks after being given away, the young puppy jumped through a closed glass window, escaping his new owners, and ran miles back to Seppala's kennel. This act of sheer devotion convinced Seppala to keep him, though Togo remained a troublemaker. Whenever Seppala took the main team out for training, Togo would break out of the kennel and chase them, causing chaos. One day, out of frustration, Seppala put an 8-month-old Togo in a harness just to keep him under control. To his absolute shock, the rebellious pup transformed instantly. He wasn't just running, he was leading. By the end of that first day, the novice puppy had covered 75 miles. Seppala realized he hadn't just found a lead dog, he had found a once-in-a-generation prodigy. Over the next several years, Togo and Seppala became inseparable, winning races and navigating the most dangerous trails in Alaska. Togo had an uncanny ability to sense overflow-thin ice hidden under snow and could find the trail in whiteout conditions where humans were blind. By January 1925, Togo was 12 years old. In human years, he was an old man, well past his prime for the brutal life of a sled dog. But Nome was about to face a catastrophe. A deadly outbreak of diphtheria began to spread through the town's children. Dr. Curtis Welch had only expired, useless antitoxin on hand. The town was under quarantine. Without fresh serum, the mortality rate for the 10,000 people in the region was projected to be 100%. The situation was desperate. The nearest viable serum was in Anchorage, over 1,000 miles away. The port of Nome was frozen shut by ice. No ships could get through. The primitive, open-cockpit planes of the era couldn't fly in the -50-degree weather. The only hope lay in the Great Race of Mercia relay of dog sled teams. The plan was to bring the serum by train to Nenana. And from there, 20 mushers and 150 dogs would carry the medicine across the frozen wilderness to Nome. The serum arrived in Nenana on January 27. Experts estimated the medicine would only survive the extreme cold for 6 days before becoming ineffective. Usually, the trip from Nenana to Nome took 25 to 30 days. They had to do it in less than 6. Most mushers were assigned segments of about 30 to 50 miles. But Leonhard Seppala and Togo were tasked with the most dangerous leg of all. Seppala set out from Nome to meet the relay coming from the east. He didn't realize the relay had been expanded to include more teams, so he pushed his dogs harder and further than anyone else. He drove his team 170 miles from Nome just to pick up the serum. When he finally met the incoming musher, Henry Eva, Seppala took the 20-pound cylinder of life-saving medicine and turned back into the teeth of a record-breaking storm. To save time, Seppala made a terrifying decision. He chose to cross the Norton Sound, a vast expanse of frozen sea. The ice was unstable, shifting with the tides and the wind. At any moment a crack could open and swallow the entire team into the black, freezing depths of the Arctic Ocean. The winds were screaming at 65 miles per hour, and the wind chill plummeted to nearly 85 degrees below zero. Togo, at 12 years old, led the team through a literal nightmare. At one point, they were stranded on a floating ice floe for hours until it drifted close enough to the shore ice for Seppala to toss Togo across. The dog then pulled the entire ice cake toward the shore so the rest of the team could jump to safety. Togo's feet were battered. His lungs were burning from the cold, but he never faltered. By the time Seppala handed the serum to the next musser, Charlie Olsen, Togo and his team had covered an incredible 260 miles, nearly doubled the distance of any other team in the relay. The final 53 miles of the journey were completed by Gunnar Kazan and his lead dog, Balto. Because they were the ones to enter Nome with the serum, they received the lion's share of the fame. Balto became a global superstar, the subject of movies and statues. Seppala was always a bit hurt by this, knowing that Togo had done the heavy lifting, crossing the most treacherous terrain in the worst conditions. However, the Mushin community never forgot. Togo lived out his final years in comfort, passing away at the age of 16 in 1929. Today, his strength and intelligence are preserved in the lineage of the Seppala Siberian sledog. While Balto represents the finish line, Togo represents the heart, the endurance, and the sacrifice of the trail. He was the small, sickly puppy who refused to be left behind, and in the end, he was the one who carried the weight of 1,000 lives on his shoulders. Thank you for listening to the story of the true King of the North. See you in the next video. Curious minds,